everyone, welcome to SEAS Backstage. This is your all-access pass to everything you need to know to design, produce, and inspire your next event. I'm your host, Troy Peters, SEAS Productions' very own Chief Experience Officer, here to guide you through the world of live event production. Remember to subscribe to the podcast at seaspro.com/backstage or wherever you find your favorite podcasts. On today's episode, we have Neil Thompson from Teach the Geek. Neil is an engineer turned communication coach dedicated to helping STEM professionals enhance their public speaking skills, something that I think I could find very valuable. I love speaking, but being able to learn a little bit more about that is definitely beneficial, especially when we speak on technology so much with what we do. Your platform, Teach the Geek, is designed to empower technical experts to communicate more effectively, which is something that we deal with when it comes to our own industry challenges of communicating. We give you the tour of our warehouse and being able to have an engineer that can communicate the pixel count or the volume, decibels, and all the technical jargon that goes on with, the engineers understanding that, but the layman doesn't necessarily understand that. So that's kind of what you do. You sort of bridge that gap. So can't wait to learn more of those techniques to communicate to our clients and our audiences. You've also written a book, Teach the Geek to Speak, a no-fluff public speaking guide for STEM professionals, which I can't wait to hear more about. But Neil, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me, Troy. I really appreciate being here.
Yeah, thank you so much. So let's start with just how you got into this world of Teach the Geek. What was the story where you were like, I see a need here? I mean, I can sort of see it easily because I work in that world, but tell me a little bit more about, and the focus of the journey you took to focus it on STEM professionals. I'd love to hear that.
Sure. When I first started working, I was a research associate at a small startup company, and I did a lot of work in a lab. So everything that I did was running experiments, writing up protocols and reports, and anything I generated, I passed on to my boss, and he was the one responsible for telling everybody about it. And I didn't mind that arrangement. It wasn't until my second job, when I was working as a product development engineer for a larger medical device company, that I had to start presenting in front of people. Although I'll say that I didn't know that was going to be the case when I first took the job. I thought it was going to be very similar to the research associate job I had.
Right.
I was brought into my boss's office a few months into the job and told that I was going to be a project lead. And one of those responsibilities was giving presentations in front of senior management on project status updates. So we're talking the CEO, CTO, CMO, C fill in the blanco,
right.
All the C's,
yeah.
Seated in a conference room listening to project leads talk about their project status updates. And the first few presentations I had to give were absolutely horrendous. I did not know it was possible to sweat that profusely from one's body, and yet I was doing exactly that. And I knew I wasn't doing a very good job because after the presentations, I get a whole lot of questions that I thought I'd answered during the presentation. But because I didn't put things in a way that these senior level people could understand, well, if I wasn't sweating a whole lot before or during the presentation, then it was really coming down after the presentation during the Q&A sessions. And my project eventually got canceled. And I realized at that time, maybe this whole speaking in front of others thing is something I needed to get better at. So what I ended up doing is I joined Toastmasters. It's an international organization, for those of you all that don't know, chapters all over the world, and you can practice speaking in front of others. So that was really helpful. And instead of trying to get away from giving presentations like I did with that first job, I now look for opportunities to do so. And I also noticed a lot of the other engineers who were project leads who had to give presentations, well, they weren't all that much better at it than I was. So I knew that this wasn't just something that I was struggling with. So that was really the genesis of what Teach the Geek would eventually become, which is me as a technical person helping other technical people become more comfortable and confident speaking in front of others.
I love it. That's it's like I've said, it's like I can't believe I didn't know about this because this is definitely a need. Somebody that can share those communication skills. You just talking about your own journey in that world is very reminiscent of my own, where I was working for a large trade association, actually SPIE, who I know you were just at their conference here in San Diego. I used to be on the meeting planning team with that association, and so we would plan the conference. And I remember our CEO or our board of directors or our C-suite asking us to asking me to present an idea for this really immersive experience where it was the 50th celebration of the laser. And I remember trying to go, and I was so nervous. I didn't know how to give a good be able to speak about it and everything. It ended up working, but it was so clunky, and I felt, like you said, I was sweating bullets and so nervous about it. And then shortly after that, and VIXA, which is Infocom's, like this big audiovisual trade association, they asked me to speak at their international conference. Thousands of people are there. And I was like, absolutely not. There's no way I'm going to public speak. That's not what I do. But once I sort of realized that was the one thing that scared me and I just wasn't good at, I was like, how do I conquer this? How do I become a good speaker? Because I know it's such an important step in your evolution of no matter what you do, whether you're in a relationship with your kids or your spouse or your business partners or the people that you're leading in a job, you got to be able to speak, right? And speak fluently. So what are some tips that you can give to somebody that's maybe get on that stage for the first time and speak about something they know everything about, but maybe everybody else doesn't? How do you communicate that out?
Yeah, well, I think the first thing you need to think about is getting over that fear of being in front of people. And the way I suggest doing it is thinking about all the benefits you're going to get as opposed to the fact that you're fearful of it. It actually reminds me of a conference that I attended last year. It was a technical conference, and there was a business development person giving a presentation, and afterwards he got a whole lot of technical questions he couldn't answer. But luckily there were 2 engineers from his company in the audience, and they answered the questions.
Right.
But it made me think, why didn't one of them at least co-present or give the presentation with that business development person? But it likely was due to a fear of getting up in front of people. But if they were just able to think about all the benefits that they would get, and not only to them, but to the people in the audience, now we don't have to ask the business development person to translate what they already know.
Right.
We can ask the technical person, him or herself, and the need for a translation wouldn't be all that necessary. So I think getting over the fear is certainly useful, at least as far as just seeing the benefits as opposed to the fact that you're fearful. And then once you do that, you got to think about, when you're giving presentations, who's going to be in the audience, what is their level of expertise, what kind of words do you think you could use that would be understandable to that audience? You know, I was at as you mentioned, the SBIE conference earlier this week, and it was experts talking to experts. So it's understandable that they're going to understand the jargon that they all use on a regular basis. But if you were to ask that same person giving a presentation to speak to a bunch of investors or maybe senior management people who obviously don't have the same level of expertise, try to give that same presentation, it's likely going to fall flat, or you're going to be like that. Right. Be like myself when I had to give presentations, getting a whole bunch of questions you thought you'd answer during the presentation.
Right.
So you definitely need to understand the people that you're speaking in front of, what their level of expertise is, what they want or need from your presentation too, because I think a lot of times us technical people, we want to talk about what we think is useful, what we think is interesting, but that may not be the case for the people that we're speaking to. So all these things taken into account, I think really gets you more comfortable and confident especially speaking to non-technical people. Right.
I love that. You know, I never really thought about that. I never thought about the benefit of speaking, right? When I get people that ask me too about like, how'd you get over the fear? And it's like, you know, I asked my dad, he was a professor, so he was able to, you know, share his techniques for, you know, being comfortable in front of a classroom of students. And I never really thought about like the benefit, and just looking at the pluses. You're always like, what if the microphone doesn't work? What if my PowerPoint fails? What if I forget what I want to say? And so those fears build up so easily. But you're absolutely right that now when I speak very regularly, and I feed off of the aha moments that I see my audience having, right? And that makes me feel so happy. Like I think, you know, I've been doing it for 20 years, and I think at the beginning I was still, you know, somewhat early in my career, especially since I just switched careers. But now I'm at a point where I just love giving back, and I love the next generation that wants to hear what I have to say. And I love that, you know, even working with this company where I'm probably the old dog and I'm able to share my knowledge, it feels so good and it fuels that fire. So I think you're totally right about, you got to find those things that make it magic for you, right? And make you want to keep doing it.
Oh, 100%, Troy. And I think if you're a technical person working in a corporate environment, you'll notice that the people who get the opportunities, who get the promotions and the pay raises you want, those are the people who are visible. Those are the people who are able to talk about why they should be in those positions. And the people who are able to put them in those positions hear them, see them, and then they get those positions. You don't want to be that technical person who thinks you deserve all these things, but you're not the one that's communicating that to others, just expecting other people to know that you deserve all these things.
Right. Yeah, I love that. What could you give some pointers? So I'm going to sort of paint a couple of scenarios. So if I'm the manager of a team and I interface with my team, who's a bunch of engineers, but I also interview, kind of like you were saying about that business development person, but I also interface with the clients. So I kind of have to speak both languages. What are some pointers you could give me in that role to be able to communicate what the engineers are sharing to the clients? Is there some pointers you can share about, like, I should be asking these questions or I should be delivering it in this format? Or yeah.
I think the number one thing in that situation is to let the engineers understand and just remember that they weren't always engineers. They went to engineering school. They then took on engineering roles when they finished school. So they have all this level of expertise. But before they were engineers, before they did all these things, I mean, they were non-technical people, just like the people that they're communicating with.
Right.
What kind of information could you have handled back when you were that non-technical person? It likely isn't what you can handle now as a technical person with a whole lot of experience. Well, hearken back to that person. What could they have understood? And understand that that's the person you're speaking to with this other group.
Right.
So communicate with them as that person as opposed to the technical expert that you now are.
Right. That's again, brilliant. Like, you obviously know your stuff. I'm really impressed that the thought of just go back to yourself as a child, right? And how were you trying to figure out why don't these two pieces of Lego go together, Dad? Like, and that's as simple as it needs to be, right? When you're trying to figure out, because so much of it is, if you're programming in code, it's how does the code speak to each other? How does it lay out? Or if you're, for our world, you said, a digital interface, when we were going from analog to digital, nothing spoke to each other, so you had to convert some way. So being able to have those pieces and connect them together. But if you take that first approach of, like, just not being afraid to even just ask the question, right? So many times we get our own biases get in the way where we don't want to sound like we don't know what we're talking about, so we don't ask questions.
Absolutely, Troy. And I think actually I wrote a piece about this last year for TD Magazine, and it was about the various reasons why technical people may shy away from speaking. And I think one of the bigger reasons is not being seen as the expert that you see yourself to be. Right. As a technical person, you want others to see you as the person that has the answers, because you think that all these other people think you have the answers. And that may be the case in a lot of instances, but you have to understand also that you're a human being, and no human being has all the answers.
Right.
So you have to become more comfortable saying, I don't know, but I will find out the answer.
Yep. Oh, that's perfectly put. And I think a lot of the times, I know for myself, I suffer from a little bit of imposter syndrome where I don't feel like I should be the expert in the room, but 90% of the people out there think that I probably am. And so, but I am always we all have that natural self-doubt of being like, do I really know what I'm talking about here? Am I really that smart person in the room?
It's interesting you mentioned that, Troy, because as you said, I was at this SPIE conference recently, and a lot of the presenters are graduate students and postdocs. But in the audience, you're going to have tenure-track professors who've been professors for, in some instances, decades. Mm-hmm. So they very well could be thinking, well, who am I to be speaking on this topic when you have all these tenured professors in the audience? They know way more about this than I do. But likely they don't, because when you're a graduate student, when you're a postdoc, you're working on novel research. So right. You're one of the few people that is probably the expert on this research. So just because they have more years in the field than you do does not mean that they're an expert in it.
That's right. That's right. And it's interesting, so that just so we give people some context that are watching, the SPIE conference, Society of Photonic Imaging Engineers, when you watch The Big Bang Theory and Sheldon, Sheldon, the character, he's very engineer. He's it's very, to get him to laugh takes a lot kind of thing. But they actually go to one of the SPIE conferences in the series. So that gives people that are watching, that's the kind of engineer that's in the room, right? Very dry, very to the point, and they're doctors and they're scientists. They're making the world a better place, right? And that's part of why we love working with those kinds of associations, because they are really trying to make it better. And there's you want to put those smartest people in the room, but if you can't have somebody that's that smart be able to communicate to the people that can make it happen, or the investors, and maybe it's a government, funding that needs to happen. If they don't understand it, you're not going to get it, right?
Oh, 100%. If they don't understand, the answer is going to be no matter how good your idea is.
That's right. That's right. So that was talking about the managers and managing those two, the two sides. What about as a lay person that is maybe trying to understand? What are some pointers you could give a lay person that I deal with engineers every day or technicians? How can I create more space to be able to hear what they're saying, or what are some pointers I could have?
I think in a lot of instances, the layperson may feel foolish asking the technical person questions because they don't want to appear foolish in front of them. But I think that's just like the fear of speaking, thinking about the opportunities. That's something to overcome as well, because you're missing out on what this technical person knows. So being comfortable asking questions that you may think aren't that interesting or more foolish, that's really helpful. And even explaining to the technical person, if you're able to explain this to me in using more common words or using analogies that are more understandable, then certainly I won't have as many questions to ask you, but
Right.
I'll be in a much better place to really help you if necessary with whatever you're doing. It's just we need to get to a place where what you're saying is understandable by me, and what I want from you is understandable to you as well. It's just meeting people where they are on both sides.
Yeah. I love that. So a good example, we had a creative call this morning with a client, and we're designing this experience for 1,000 attendees, and it's got a video wall that's broken into multiple components. So all these different pixel ratios, right? Pixel counts for all the different screen sizes. And I'm talking to my engineering team or my creative team that's creating the content, and they want to know, or my project manager wants to know, the pixel count, what's the resolution of the screen and the content and everything. But when we're on the call with the client, we don't talk about that at all. I'm literally on the call making sound effects going, so that this is your animated, and we play the video clip of an animated logo appearing, and I'm literally on the call, and it'll sound like this, like whoosh, right? Like, and that is my way of, and you can see the client on the call going, oh yeah, with the sound, it looks like so cool. Whereas an engineer is like, I don't care about the sound. I just want to know what the pixel count is, right? So it is like just whatever it takes. And for me, sometimes I do a lot of like gesturing, like we're going to have the credits come down this way, and then they're going to grow up towards you. And so that for me is just that easy sort of ABC way of being able to communicate what might be way more technical. And a client doesn't necessarily need to know all the technical. Some want to know that, but for the most part, they just want to get the effect.
Oh, yeah, that's really what it is. And those technical people who are in that position need to understand that. Certainly, there are the things that they think are interesting, but for the people that they're speaking to, the people that they're working with, what do they find interesting? And what words can you use to communicate what you want to these people so that they understand it? So
Right.
if you have to whoosh, then whoosh.
That's right. I love it. If you got a whoosh, then whoosh. That should be on a T-shirt. Teach the Geek.
I wonder how you spell whoosh.
Is there WH or WO? Tell us a little bit about the book.
The book
I'm just going to repeat the title. Teach the Geek to Speak, a no-fluff public speaking guide for STEM professionals.
Yes, the book stemmed from a course that I developed early on in Teach the Geek called Teach the Geek to Speak. The initial iteration of the course was me seated at a table like this one with dim lighting, speaking to a camera, talking about all the things that I think are interesting or useful in a technical person getting better at speaking with, especially in front of non-technical people. Luckily, that course never saw the light of day because it was, because I sent it to a friend to look it over, and she said, "You can't put this out.
No.
We can barely even see you. Get a ring light, for God's sake." So I got a couple of ring lights, but
Yeah.
she also said that there's no process to this. There's no system. There's no process to what you're talking about. It's all over the place, which is rather interesting considering the fact that when I worked as an engineer, I worked in medical devices, and to commercialize a medical device, to market it, you have to follow an FDA mandated process.
Right.
So in my day job, I'm following a process, but then I develop a course, I don't follow a process.
Gotcha.
The irony was interesting. So I eventually went back to the drawing board, I developed a process, and essentially the book is the course in book form. So I talk about the process starting from audience analysis all the way to managing your filler words, managing timing, structuring a presentation so that it's easily followable, and then getting feedback from others and also from yourself, because what you think of your presentations is just as important as what others think of it as well. So that's essentially what the book is about. It's about the 6-step process and how it can be beneficial to technical people who have to present.
I love that. It's funny. You've said a couple times about, understanding your audience. And I never really thought about that. I've, sort of like blanket, okay, I get this, what this audience is kind of going to be in a very general term. But I was working with a great person, Nancy Spooner, and she and I created a talk for a recent conference about all the different roles and responsibilities on the production team and how we put these shows together. And that was her biggest question, was who's in the room? What level of experience do they have? And I never really thought about that, but that really is such a big part. And don't be afraid to ask if you're going to go speak to a class at a university or a group of investors or whatever it is. Ask whoever's organizing that event, what level are these people at? Are they beginners? Are they learning the systems? Or are they well-seasoned? Are they all doctorates? Have they been in this world forever? Yeah, that's such a great point.
Oh, yeah. And in the instance where you have a mixed audience, where you have some newbies and you have some experts as well, how do you thread that needle to be able to appeal to both? I'm a big fan of priming what you're about to say before you say it. So if you're going to say something that's more technical, that the more advanced people can understand, say that beforehand. I'm about to say something a bit more technical, so
that's not bad. I like
buckle
that.
up.
Yeah,
so at least the newbies will know it's coming.
Yeah. I love that, Neil. Very well said. And then the other side is like, even, different people have different learning styles. Some people are tactile, where they learn by touching something and working through something. Some people are visual, where they want a teacher to present slides, and that's how they gather it. And then some are, I think the last one's auditory, where it's like they just need to hear it and understand it. How do you approach that? Just trying to cover all the different ways that people learn.
Well, I mean, certainly if there's opportunities to have models of what you're talking about, to be able to pass around tangible things, that's helpful for the more kinesthetic people. For the auditory people, you probably want to have some, or at least, I would say for the audio and the visual people, you want to have as few words on the slide as possible. Because when you do that, you're eliminating the option of them reading.
Right.
Because now they either have to listen or ignore you.
Right.
So you've increased the odds of them listening from 1 to 3 to 1 to 2, and 1 to 2 are better odds. So I think to be able to appease everybody, it's having images also on slides as well, minimizing text, so it forces the person presenting to really know their material as opposed to reading it. I mean, there were many instances where I was at this conference where I heard a lot of people reading their slides, and I don't even know what their face looks like, because all I see is the top of their head.
The whole time going, so point A, and then just reading right off the slide.
Yeah, but I could read too. Yeah. So when you're reading, I'm reading, and then maybe when you start talking, I'm still reading, and I missed something that you said that wasn't on the slide because I'm still reading.
Yep.
It for any, I think, learning style, by having fewer text on the slides or fewer text on slides, I think it's helpful for people to really key in on what you're saying, and then it also forces the presenters to know their stuff well.
I love it. Tell us, what's the audience you're looking for? Who are you looking for out there? And then we'll kind of wrap it up from that. But like, what if somebody was like listening to this podcast and like, I need Neil to speak to my group, because who is that audience you're looking for?
Typically people in talent development or learning and development within organizations. They're the ones who bring in outside vendors or outside trainers. So those people who see the benefit of their technical staff improving their communication skills is useful. And then also the technical people themselves, certainly based on the things that I talk about, hopefully it's pertinent to them because they see it in themselves. Because
right.
I'm speaking from personal experience. I'm not a person that as a communications coach who's never worked in a technical field
right.
telling you what to do.
Yeah.
I'm you.
Real life examples and real life stories, and that makes such a big difference.
I think so. It certainly adds to credibility.
So if somebody wants to hire you or reach out and learn more, how can they get a hold of you?
They can get me by email, hello@teachthegeek.com. I have a podcast called the Teach the Geek podcast, where I interview technical people on their public speaking journeys, and that's at podcast.teachthegeek.com. And I also have a YouTube channel called Teach the Geek where I offer tips on people getting better or how technical people can get better at giving presentations. And that's youtube.teachthegeek.com. Or you can find all of that at teachthegeek.com.
Awesome. Beautiful. You do anything with kids or any, like, you ever get out to like science groups or anything like that, high schools or?
It's interesting. So with kids, not necessarily, although I will say that I wrote a children's book a few years back.
No kidding.
Yeah, it's called Ask Uncle Neil, Why is My Hair Curly?
Really?
Yeah, it's about my nephew asking me why his hair is the way it is, and I use science to answer the question. So every now and then I'll go to schools and read the book.
That's awesome. Neil, thank you so much for being on the podcast. This has been one of my favorite conversations. They know where to reach you. And again, yeah, thank you for being here. This has been SEAS Backstage, your all access pass to everything you need to know to design, produce, and inspire your next event. Remember to subscribe to the podcast at seaspro.com/backstage or wherever you find your favorite podcasts. Thanks so much, everybody. Thank you, Neil.
Thanks again for having me.
Right on.